Merry Christmas to all of our followers and all of our first time and probably last time visitors to Lancashire Footnotes, or happy holidays if you're on the commercial wing. We're down to the leftover footnotes this festive season, much like our Christmas dinner, excavating those backup bits of footage from our hard drive, because Santa Sunak and his mates have got all our money and we couldn't afford to do any proper filming. Don't worry, that's it for the festive politics. Regardless, this sort of stuff always makes for an eclectic mix, so let's start with a random dip into the archives and Blackpool Illuminations, almost seasonal, the annual autumnal colossal carbon footprint that makes a joke out of ordinary households switching over to energy-saving bulbs, a combination of over 1 million light bulbs and a nightly procession of exhaust-pumping cars, burning a hole in the world's ecosystem that had put Eric Pickle's methane expulsion to shame. The Illuminations, believe it or not, began way back in 1879, consisting of just 8 carbon arc lamps, which must have seemed quite extraordinary back in those dark times. Over the decades, the lights, as us locals call them, have been switched on by just about everybody, even remotely famous. From the Beatles to Jane Mansfield, from the cast of Dad's Army to Red Rum, from David Tennant to Tim Burton. I could go on, but Google Images are going to start charging us at this rate. To be honest, Blackpool Illuminations are probably quite exciting when you're 10 years old and still curious about what happens outside after 7:30 at night. When you reach our age, however, even the nostalgia starts to get a bit crusty. Going off at a complete tangent, we did warn you that this episode was going to be eclectic, and we're living up to the footnotes bit of our name here. Burnham Hall near Cockerham is a 12th century country house that stands proudly in a stunning estate of nearly 30 acres. Boasting an elegant Jacobean Great Hall, the resort combines the very best of old and new, according to its website, as it would. According to other, slightly less commercial sources, it once belonged to Lady Jane Grey's old man, and was originally constructed around a fortified peel tower, now of course haunted by a white lady, or more accurately, a green lady, although oddly enough not by Lady Jane Grey herself, which would have been good for publicity if nothing else, but one of the Dalton family, previous owners of the building. Burnham Hall is one of those old buildings that's been turned around from front to back at some point over the centuries. There's a Roman road runs round what is nowadays the rear, and some interesting platforms in the grounds that archaeologists could do with investigating, we reckon. Moving on, me and Jeannie McIntosh went to Ray Green when it was raining, which is probably the best way to see Ray Green, from a car window as you're passing through. Recorded as Rigby in the Doomsday Book, Ray Green is ostensibly a village surrounding a field, with a windmill tucked away in one corner of it, which, because it was raining, we couldn't be bothered tracking down. We had a look at the Grade 2 listed St Nicholas's Church, the foundation stone for which was laid on May the 13th, 1848, by the appropriately named Reverend G.L. Parsons. I'm not going to make the obvious joke about laying a foundation stone again. You can always tell when a community has money when a Victorian church is Grade 2 listed. Another church worth mentioning, although we're not entirely sure that St Nicholas's was worth a mention, is St John's at Broughton, constructed in the 1300s over the top of an earlier 1100s affair. The font, which we didn't film because it was inside and we weren't, is in fact Saxon. The oldest bit of the building nowadays is the Millstone Grit Tower, built in 1533. There's a crossbase with a sundial on it in the graveyard, and some old stocks near the gate which date from the same period. And there's a Tudor cottage next door, which seems a bit incongruous, standing as it does, or as it appears to be standing, in the school playground. Makes a change from a sports shed. Let's have a quick look at Overton, and it will be a quick look because there's not a lot there worth looking at. Originally the site of a Roman settlement, perhaps the most interesting thing about Overton is that it overlooks Glasson Dock on the other side of the River Lune. It's also got an ancient church, St Helens, claiming to be the oldest church in Lancashire, although St Peter's at not too distant Heysham would probably have a thing or two to say about that. The church has a well-preserved Norman doorway, which is 1,000 years old if you knock that up on British history, and what appears to be the remains of an old keel cross in the graveyard. We took a walk down the Ginnel to the riverbank, but it was extremely cold and bleak when we got there, so we quickly walked back up again. Believe it or not, 29 of the buildings in Overton are listed. One's the Globe Hotel, one's the haunt of sailors working the West Indies route. It doesn't have the best of reviews on TripAdvisor. What a dump, says one visitor. Keep away, it's the dirtiest place in the country to stay in. The food's disgusting. Soggy scampi and an 8-ounce sirloin steak that was more like a 2-ounce sausage. The jolly landlord is a surly, miserable fellow with people skills more akin to Rudolf Hess, says another review. Drive past, it's rubbish, says yet another. Worst run place I've ever been. We couldn't possibly comment because we've never stayed there ourselves and we suspect we never will. Onwards to the Catholic Church at Dunsop Bridge, not a particularly old structure, designed as it was by Edward Pugin in 1865. St Huberts was unusually built on the winnings of a racehorse called Kettledrum. The font, stroke water stoop just inside the door, which we didn't film because the building was closed, originated in the ancient church of Burnham near Whitewell. There's a grave in the churchyard that has a bird bath on it. We've no idea why. And that is about all we have to say about St Huberts. One last frozen Christmassy church for now, St Peter's in Scorton, another not particularly old building. It's Christmas, so we're being all-encompassing here. Having been erected in 1878 for the Ormerod family of Wyresdale Hall, nowadays better known as the Apple Store, but for some reason it's grade 2 listed and appears to have a problem with squirrels. And that's it. Like we said, it's Christmas, so we're off to wrap ourselves up warm like pigs in blankets. Hopefully you'll have a good hangover and be able to join us again in the new year when we continue with our travels proper.